AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What ALLEN Ande Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Ande Anderson. My partner, ALLEN, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Dr. Les Carter, is with us today to talk about how narcissists bring out the worst in you. Dr. Carter is a best-selling author and therapist, and his passion is working one-on-one with individuals in his counseling office. He has been in private practice since 1980, when he completed his PhD in clinical counseling at the University of North Texas. In the past 40 plus years, he has conducted more than 65,000 counseling sessions and many workshops and seminars. He specializes in anger management and narcissistic personality disorder. Welcome to AVAIYA, Les.
I'm so pleased to have you, to be here with you.
So excited to have you, and you have quite the background. It seems like this is something you've been doing for a long time. Lots of sessions. That's a lot.
Well, it means I'm old, and it means I've been busy. Actually, I'm semi-retired now, so that's kind of a nice thing. So I'm still doing my YouTube work and all of that. It's important for you and your viewers to know that I'm coming at my topic from the angle of the therapist who's heard virtually every story in the book. I know many people speak about narcissism kind of out of the textbook, which is fine. It's right and good. But I'm just talking after having spoken to the man and woman on the street, so to speak. And so my ongoing counseling with so many people has become just my source of education, frankly. And so they're learning, but I am too. And so what I have to share is a conglomeration of many, many stories and many insights that I've gleaned through people that I've had the privilege to work with.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of what you've done over the years and continue to do. And let's talk narcissism. What would your definition of narcissism be?
Well, it's a multifaceted pattern on a spectrum. It's not just a singular kind of thing. When we talk about narcissism, some of the primary ingredients that we look at is these are highly self-impressed people. They can come across as very selfish. They must be in control. And we all want to have a certain amount of control in our lives, but they want to control you. They have an agenda, and they want to make sure that people stay on top of that agenda. They have an angle of superiority. They have an attitude of entitlement. Here's what you need to do for me. They're not at all bashful about manipulating and exploiting people. And then one of the key things is they operate with what I refer to as an alternate reality. You and I may say, well, this is what's going on here between us, or here's my interpretation. And they're constantly letting you know, no, you got it wrong. Here's what I say. And so they have to have the final interpretation. And so much of that alternate reality is part of their need to prop up a false self. And that's a huge part of narcissism as well. What you see on the outside is merely a compensation for much of the insecurity and inadequacy they struggle with on the inside, but they cannot access that within themselves, and they're certainly not going to reveal that with you. So you can see it's a multitude of issues. Yeah. And then when I say it's a pattern on a spectrum, then that makes it all the more intriguing. And if I can use a little numbers analogy, it's not technical, but let's say in the 95% level, where people have these ingredients just out the wazoo, and it's just leaves no room for the imagination. There it is. Those would be the people that we would refer to as NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. They tend to have very strong malignant ingredients. In other words, there's an extra measure of harshness and meanness, and it is just so deeply embedded in their personalities that they can't get out of their own way, and they make lives absolutely miserable for everyone else. But then let's suppose you have somebody that's maybe at the 62% level. They have quite a bit of it, More often than not, that's what you're going to see. Sometimes they can appear pretty normal, but then it doesn't take much. They get triggered, or maybe you have somebody that's at the 40% level. And it's like, well, it doesn't show up as much, but stick around, it'll probably be there. Healthy individuals will keep their inclinations down. The way I put it is around the 20% level. In other words, I can have my moments where I have my selfish impulses or I want to be in control of people, but wait a minute, I can contain it. We're not going to just let it run. And so they're self-aware, they have insight, and they're constantly in a growth mode towards what I call their higher priorities. There are other things besides just me that matter. Let me go in that space. So it's a very broad and it's a very intriguing kind of topic. And it's one that every one of us can relate to on a personal level. And certainly every single one of us has had individuals in our world who would fit this description sometimes to the fullest extent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that you talk about it as a spectrum, because I've definitely, over the years of, at AVAIYA University, exploring these different topics, right, see the narcissism in me and also see the codependency in me, and all these different, spectrums of ways of being. So I love that you mentioned that. So, we all have bits and pieces of things, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to, take over our thinking or our life, or we're going to act on it.
Exactly. Now, here's the rub. And we mentioned that our topic is how narcissists can bring out the worst in you.
Yeah.
Let's suppose that you're in the presence of someone who is highly overbearing or controlling. And by the way, we can say also that narcissists can come in various varieties. They may be very overt in the way they do it, or they may be quite covert. In other words, those ingredients are very much in their personality. They just don't let you see it right up front, but over time it's revealed. But when you're in the presence of someone who has this strong narcissism, eventually they just wear you out, because part of their need to be in control and their desire to be superior, well, it requires somebody to be in the flunky role. And that's where you come in. That's where I come in. Somebody needs to be in the inferior position.
Right.
And so what you find is that you're on the receiving end of a great deal of criticism, second guessing. We have a term that we call gaslighting. I'm sure everybody's heard that word before. But gaslighting means that they want to keep you off your game. They want to keep you in a confused state. So if you say to me, hey, I noticed that such and such happened and it really didn't hit me well, then the gaslighting narcissist might say, no, you need to go back and check your facts. Or, well, all of that is true, except this is what set it up, and you don't understand the backstory. And they'll keep you in a guessing posture. And over time, you have this building frustration and tension where they have their controlling messages, their criticisms. They can't be pleased. They can't be honest with themselves. They're very secretive at times because of their own need to cover up. And your frustration begins building. And of course, that's normal. You begin having feelings of anger and hurt and disillusionment and disappointment. And then they'll come back and say, well, if there's a problem, it's not my fault, it's your fault. And it can create that much more of a strain and tension. And if you don't have a real strong strategy for how to manage that, before you know it, they pull you into some sort of reaction, and you may yell something like, stop it, or quit it. I hate the way you're talking to me. And then they play the gotcha game. Yeah, look at how you're talking to me right now. and that's how they do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how am I supposed to talk to someone that's so unstable, just like you? And it's like, I stepped in that trap again. And so they are in a game playing mode. To them, relationships are a competition. You're not wanting it to be a competition at all. You're wanting it to be, a relationship. I share my heart with you, you share your heart with me, or I just talk about my plans and you discuss yours, and we have a collaboration. And in their mind, it's like, no, this isn't about collaboration. This is about me staying superior. And so that's the scenario that we can be in, and it's crazy making.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for describing how being in this kind of relationship can bring out the worst in us. So let's talk a little bit more about, right, being pulled into certain patterns or reactions or defensiveness or anger. In your work, you talk a little bit about like narcissists pulling people into like codependent patterns. Any thoughts there?
Well, let's start with the realization that narcissists, it's not that they want to be admired, they need to be admired. They look at other people as potential supply. When we talk about narcissistic supply, we're talking about them needing someone to build them up and to prop up their fragile ego. And so they're constantly wondering, okay, do you know how important I am? Or can't you see how correct I am? Or you have your thoughts, but why don't we just go ahead and agree that I'm better? And so they have this real strong emotional neediness. And if you were to ever say, and I've had some narcissists in my office, and usually they're there because somebody else pushed them in there because there's some sort of crisis. And then they're in there trying to convince me how correct they are and how I don't know what I'm talking about and how that other person in their world is such an idiot. And so they have this strong sense of dependency that they operate with. They're constantly looking outward. What do you think about me? And how did I come across? And did you understand me? Or are you going to hold me in highest regard? And so when you don't offer them the supply in the way that they're seeking, then they start coming at you. They whittle away at your dignity. They whittle away at your logic and your reasoning. They mock your emotions. And you've heard, of course, the term codependent. Dependency means that you allow your mood and your sense of direction to be determined by outer circumstances. Well, is just a prefix that means with. One person is wishing that others will give them what they want. That's their dependency. But then you can be over here thinking, well, I'm not getting exactly what I want from you. And before you know it, it hooks you at your place of dependency. So now you're feeding off of me. I'm feeding off of you. We get into this heavy reactor pattern. That's the codependent pattern. Right. And we get pulled into that rabbit hole where we're both so busy reacting off of one another that nobody's taking any healthy initiative. And that's the trap that we can fall into.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you going over that. And I know a lot of people can, see this narcissistic codependent kind of dynamic, and it's something that's talked about more and more these days. So, right, if you're finding yourself in that position, it's good to, become aware of it. So you've mentioned, right, that narcissists want or really like need to be in control over other people. So what do you think it is about their control that is just so toxic?
Well, every human being has a free will. And in healthy relationships, we start with the presumption that says, well, I have some thoughts and ideas, but you do too. And I want to know who you are, and I want to respect the fact that you have your unique way of looking at the world. The narcissist, though, with their need for control, they want to get inside of your head and they want to eliminate that free will stuff. It's like, I don't want you to be free to think what you want to think because their insecurity won't allow it. And there's a real interesting paradox that I operate with, and I have talked with my patients about through the years with respect to this control dynamic. The best way to be in control is to quit trying to be so in control. Now, that's a thought that is completely lost on narcissists. For example, let's suppose that you and I have a disagreement. Well, if I'm a narcissistic person, I'm going to tell you what you need to think and how you need to respond and what you should have said and how you need to interpret things. In other words, my high control just causes me to just pound on you verbally. But let's suppose that you and I have a disagreement and I remind myself, well, you're free. You get to be who you are. And so I'm going to say something to the effect of, well, I can tell that you and I are thinking differently. Help me understand. What is it that you want me to know? And what are you picking up on that obviously I'm not quite catching on to? Let's talk. And so if I approach you with this non-control style and non-codependent style, then the less controlling I am, the more you and I are going to get to a good place. Narcissists can't do that to save their life. And so their need for control just creates this constant battleground feeling. And the key is for you and I to understand what the dynamic is, to see it for what it is. And mentally, particularly when you know you're going to be around that person for any length of time, you predetermine, I can't afford to let that person set my pace. I know what they're about. And that's so important to have that insight. I know who they are. I know what their tactics are. I know what their motives are. And that being the case, I'm going to have my own separate individual mannerism, my own mindset that guides me. And when that person comes along and wants to pull the rug out from under me, it's like, no, you see, I'm not going to be the in your codependency. I don't play that game.
Oh, I love that. I'm not going to be the your
Yeah.
codependency. That's good.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. That is super helpful. And so what would you say for people watching? What are some of the most common mistakes that you see people make in all your years of counseling when they're in, let's say, an ongoing relationship with someone who is this controlling?
The biggest mistake that a person can make is attempting to convince that narcissist that they don't need to act like a narcissist. And the reason that's problematic, and the reason that people have struggles coming to terms with that, is that in their mind, it's like, but I'm right. That person's treating me incorrectly. And so they want so badly to say, if we'll do A instead of B, you and I can get along much better. And close to 100% of the time, the narcissist is going to reply with something like, nope, not having it. And so when you find yourself trying to go into I call it this is what I refer to as the 3 no's: no pleading, no coaxing, no convincing. When you find yourself going into the pleading and the coaxing and the convincing, trying to get that narcissist to see the light, that's when you're inclined to go into their space and get on their terms, because they're going to just twist you every way but loose, like they twist you like a pretzel. And so you start with the presumption, this person is not likely to understand me. I have to accept that as my truth. This person is not really interested in knowing anything beyond their own biased perspectives. I get it. And that being the case, you just have to speak plainly about who you are, knowing that you're going to get some blowback. And then you take what I refer to as the nonetheless approach. You might say something like, here's my perspective, and therefore here's how I'm going to proceed. And they'll say, well, that's just stupid, and you can't do it that way. Well, the nonetheless approach says, well, I understand we differ. Nonetheless, that's what I'm going to do anyway. And you stick with your guns, and you hold to your convictions and your values. And when they say, you're just so argumentative, it's like, I realize we don't see things eye to eye, but nonetheless, what I said makes good sense to me. And they'll say something like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You don't have all the facts. Well, nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and hang in there anyway with my initiatives. And you don't even attempt to try to make them think differently, because they won't. And remember, part of the definition of narcissism is they're very self-impressed. And there's only one opinion in the room that matters, and it's not yours.
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. Cause right. I was thinking about what you said about the convincing and pleading, right? Cause then we're just trying to be controlling and controlling them. And then it's probably just a very unhealthy ping pong match of control that doesn't get us anywhere.
Okay. I'm going to pull out some of my high school Latin on you.
Excellent.
The word convince, the VINC part, and we get the word invincible and victorious out of it, means to conquer. And so if I am speaking to someone in a convincing style, it implies that I'm in a competition and I'm trying to conquer, I'm trying to win. With narcissists, that goes straight into their wheelhouse. They see relationships as a competition, and it's all about which one of us is going to come out on top. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm not in a relationship to convince anybody. go back to my free will thing. You can think anything you want, just as I can. If we're going to have a healthy relationship, you share your thoughts and feelings and needs. I'll do the same in reverse. And no convincing. Let's just see if we have enough common ground or enough mutual regard where we can just speak and talk and be plain and be normal and find a reasonable middle ground. And if we can't, then we're not going to have a very in-depth relationship. And I need to know that. But hopefully by not trying to control, then that's when we can have the highest level of healthy control or healthy reliability and responsibility with one another.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing out your high school Latin. I appreciate it. I didn't know that.
Mrs. Tisdale would be proud of me.
There it is. I love that. So let's talk about, I guess, what some strategies for people to apply, right, if they're dealing with these more narcissistic people. So what are some of the key insights or adjustments a person can make so that they can take charge of their personal stability, right, knowing that the narcissist will probably more than likely persist?
Well, particularly when you've had ongoing interactions with a narcissist, over time, you can start predicting what some of the common scenarios are or some of the common trigger points are. And so it's going to be so important for you to start rehearsing in your mind. If I'm in a meeting with this person, or if we're trying to discuss what to do with little Junior over here, or if we're trying to figure out our social plans, I know from past experience that there's a likelihood that A, B, or C is going to happen. I need to just know what the possibilities are. And you just kind of have to have that sense that says, I'm taking notes and I'm figuring this thing out. That way, when it does happen, rather than being caught off guard, thinking, oh, wow, this really shocks me. Well, no, I'm not shocked. We've been through this many times before, and here it is again. And chances are tomorrow or next week, it's going to happen all over again. Okay, there it is. Then what you do is you go back into your own well-conceived ideas about who you want to be. And you ask yourself, in these various scenarios, what are my options? This is your freedom. What are my options? Who do I want to be when that narcissist becomes critical, or when that narcissist tries to change my plans? How might I proceed? And one of the things I tell people is put the crummy options out there along with the good options. I can yell at that person. That's always an option. Mm-hmm. I can defend myself vigorously. That's another option. I can cry. I can go off into another room. I can call my best friend and complain. Those are all options. Another option is I can use that nonetheless approach. I can say, I'd like to hear your perspective, and then I'll make my own decision. I can have a certain amount of patience. And when I say patience, it's like I know that I'm going to have to wade through the time frame here and finally get to the other side. I'll get there. I always have. And you can predetermine your own decisiveness, and you can predetermine who you want to be and the traits that you want to have. And this is you taking charge of yourself, as opposed to letting that person use you as supply for their needs. And then beyond that, knowing that you're probably not going to get the full measure of encouragement or support, you begin figuring out, and then what might my consequences or stipulations be when that person predictably doesn't like what I say, think, or do. Mm-hmm. And we have a word for that. It's called boundaries. And you're living inside your definition of yourself, and then you allow boundaries to come into play. In other words, if you continue to criticize me, then I'll probably need to bring my portion of the discussion to a close. Or if you want to sabotage my projects, then I'll find ways to manage my project without your cooperation. I get it. And so it's a way of going inside of yourself and determining, instead of this person bringing out the absolute worst in me, I have a plan for what a healthy me looks like. And I know what my vulnerable moments are. I've rehearsed it in advance. And when it shows up, I'm not going to be so caught off guard. You're not in charge of me. I'm in charge of me. And that's such a a breakthrough revelation for so many people who have just become so weary that they've laid down their good decision making. And it's like, okay. And the narcissist has just run roughshod over them. It's like, no, you need to stand up for your own dignity. In fact, I have a little mantra, Dr. C, stands for DRC, stands for dignity, respect, and civility. And those are ingredients that I want to stand in. I want to maintain my dignity. I want to maintain respect for me and for you. And I want to have a mind of civility. And Mr. or Mrs. Narcissist over there, if that's not something you're committed to, well, I'm still committed to it. And that's who I'm going to be.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And I think it's so helpful what you're saying so that, right, we don't end up in this defensive, reactive kind of mode, but we've planned ahead, like you said. And I also love that you said you plan ahead for all the different possibilities of how you can react, right? Like, don't take, I could get angry or whatever off the table, because, like giving yourself the space to, right, like, I could explore that. Here's how that would turn out versus this.
How's that going to work? That's another question.
Right. Yeah. I think that's great. Thank you for all of those strategies and tips that people can start applying in their relationships. So Les, I'd love it if you'd share a little bit about a free gift you have for everyone, and everyone watching. There's a button below that takes you over to Les's website. So what do you have for us?
Well, I have an ebook. Remind me, because I have several of them.
Yes.
The title of it.
I'm scrolling up. Okay. It is called Understand the Narcissist, 50 Must-Know Narcissism Terms.
Right. We've come up with several of them. I forgot which one. Yeah. It's an ebook. And so you can download it. And what I've done is I've come up with 50 different terminologies, gaslighting and stonewalling and things like that, so that you can kind of get an idea of what you're dealing with a narcissist. And it's just kind of a good way to kind of understand the glossary, the terminology that we use. And so you click the link there, and it's theirs for you to have for free.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure that'll be super helpful for people to recognize things they don't even know have a term, right? Different behaviors. So
right.
Awesome.
Right. That's the point.
Yeah. So any last insights, anything else you want to leave people with before we wrap up?
Well, and that we have our Surviving Narcissism YouTube channel, and on the channel, I have all sorts of teachings about not just what narcissism is, but about who you are as you engage with that person. We call it surviving narcissism. And part of it is I need to be alive in my own way. And so it's so important for you to understand that even though you want to have interpersonal coordination with narcissists, it's not very likely. So you need to have your intrapersonal healthiness and well-being established so that they can't take that away from you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, Andy, it's been a delight, and I so appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's been a delight for me as well. I really appreciate you and all your work and all this great information you shared today. And AVAIYA students watching or listening, thank you so much for showing up. We wouldn't be here without you. So huge kudos for you for being here with us on this journey. And we will see you all again very soon. Take care. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this latest class with Dr. Les Carter. We talked about how narcissists bring out the worst in you. I really enjoyed this conversation because he brought it back to, right, just remembering for ourselves to not allow others to set our pace. Don't allow others to create a reaction in us, right? Be responsible for what kind of response we're going to give out into the world, right? So not allowing others to set your pace, not allowing yourself to get triggered by others' behaviors and then respond in ways that perhaps you'll regret later, right? So I really love that he talked about planning your responses ahead of time. So maybe you're coming into a situation where you're going to deal with a family member who tends to trigger you, a narcissistic family member, toxic family member, something like that, right? Start planning your responses ahead of time, right? If you know these people and you know how they tick and you know certain things that in the past have happened or certain ways that you have been triggered in the past, then remember those things, right? And plan your responses ahead, right? So that you're being responsible for your own well-being, and you're not allowing yourself to perhaps get defensive or reactive or these kinds of behaviors that you're not going to be happy with later on, right? Or they don't make you feel good, or they raise your blood pressure or what have you. So I thought that was a really great way of thinking about it, and a great strategy to take on in your life in dealing with difficult people and difficult relationships. So thank you as always for showing up for yourself, for being here with us, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
AVAIYA has changed my life.
AVAIYA has made me the woman I am today.
AVAIYA is my home.
AVAIYA is personal freedom.
AVAIYA is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about AVAIYA.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, AVAIYA, for appearing in my inbox.
What ALLEN and Ande Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.